Just wait. Look, we are discussing about the intervention, okay? So only two slides left for this part. Do you have any query from this intervention? Intervention of government through tax, the distribution of tax, price ceiling, price flooring. Any doubt in this topic? Any particular doubt? No, na? So tax on the seller, that part is done. What we are discussing, how the tax on the consumer is influencing the consumer as well as the producer's price. And similarly, when the tax is imposed on the seller, how it is influencing the price paid by the consumer and price taken by the seller. Okay, and there we see that for both the cases, that means whether tax is imposed on consumer or tax is imposed on seller, for both the cases the price paid by the consumer is similar and the price paid by the producer is also same, right? So that means, what is the conclusion? That first, there are two conclusions actually. The first conclusion is, if tax is imposed either on consumer or on producer, the problem is faced by both. This is the first. And second problem in economics, it is called burden. So the burden of tax, it has to be beared by both. This is the first thing. And second, if it is imposed by consumer or it is imposed by producer, but the effect is same for both. If it is imposed by consumer, look, then consumer was paying 3.3. Now the tax is imposed on seller, but still consumer is paying 3.3. Okay, so what we can conclude, that whether it is imposed on consumer or on the seller, the effect is equal. The effect is equal, effect is same. Okay, so based on that, this is the thing. Ultimately, if tax is imposed, ultimately we will get this diagram, right? And here I did this part, that say tax is imposed on the seller, then the supply curve is shifted like this, right? And if tax is imposed on the consumer, then the demand curve will shift like this. So finally the thing will be same. And if it is, then what happened, that here it is imposed on in the labor market. So wage the firms are paying is this higher than before, and the wage workers receive is lesser than before. So this is how the burden is distributed. Fine. So this part is done. Now this is the last part which I am going to discuss for today, elasticity and the tax burden. Look, so up to this slide, it is clear to us that if tax is imposed, both sides of the market has to bear the burden, bear the problem of tax. Now, how much the burden? How much will be the burden? That is the question. Is it equal or unequal? If it is not equal, then how much inequality will be there? Okay, so it depends on the elasticity. Look at this diagram. In this diagram, tell me, in this diagram, one demand curve is there, one supply curve is there. Just tell me, which one is more elastic, demand or supply? Which one is relatively elastic? Yes?
Supply.
Yes. Yeah. Supply is relatively elastic. That is why, as compared to the demand curve, supply curve is very much flatter. Now, given that if the tax is imposed, look, just impose. Now we know if tax is imposed, there is no need of shifting. There is no need of shifting. Okay, we can just find out the tax rate and draw the line accordingly, and then we will find out the effect or the burden on consumer and the producer. So this is the tax rate here. If the tax rate is this, then look, this is the price paid by the buyer and this is the price received by the seller. So look at the gap for the seller and for the buyer. So whose burden is more? Consumer's burden is more, na? because this gap is greater than this gap, right? This gap is more than this gap. This is smaller. So what is the conclusion? That if you are inelastic, the burden will be more. If you are elastic, the burden will be less. Look at the next diagram, it will be more clear. In this diagram, demand is more elastic than supply. Okay, relatively supply side is inelastic. Again, the same tax rate is imposed. Look at the burden now. The gap for the producer is this. The gap for the consumer is this. So the burden on the producer is quite high as compared to the consumer. Okay, so what is the conclusion? That as supply side is relatively inelastic, so suppliers are getting more burden of tax. So this is the relation between the elasticity and the burden of tax. Any query?
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, that means that the more the elasticity the side has, the lesser the burden they have to take, right? And what happens if the demand, if the one of the side is perfectly inelastic? Then what will
Perfectly
happen?
inelastic means the total burden is on yours.
Okay, okay,
And if you are perfectly elastic, there will be no burden.
okay, ma'am, okay.
Okay, so there is, I can say that there is an inverse relationship between the elasticity and the burden. If elasticity is more, burden is less. Okay, so this is how you can remember, and it's better to draw the diagram, then it will be more clear. Okay, now here this is the last diagram of our unit 5, I just want to tell you one thing, that here when the tax is imposed, so now we are all informed that if tax is imposed to the consumer, price is increased. Whoever is paying the ultimate tax, but to the consumer, price is increased, right? But if price is increasing, then the demand should fall, right? That we know. And that change in demand, that fall in demand, that will be along the demand curve, because price is rising. Price is rising, demand is falling. That means the consumer is moving like this. Look at the arrow. This is how the consumers are moving, because for the consumer, the price is increasing. On the other hand, for the producer, producers are receiving lesser money than before. So they will reduce the supply, but as it is the change in supply because of change in price. So this is the movement along the supply curve. So the supply curve is shifting like this. Supply is shifting like this. And ultimately the supplier will stop here. The consumer will stop here. And at this point, quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. Look, prices are different. The gap between the two prices is the tax rate, true. But whatever the consumer is demanding, this is supplied by the producer. Is it clear? Okay, I'm repeating. Look, from this diagram, we know that if tax is imposed on consumer or on producer, whoever is liable to pay the tax, for the consumer, price will increase. Do you agree with me? Is it clear? If the tax is imposed on the consumer or it is imposed on the producer, that means if consumer is liable to pay the tax or producer is liable to pay the tax, whoever will pay the tax, if tax is imposed to the consumer, price is rising. Is that clear? If you compare these two diagrams, it should be clear. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So whoever will pay the tax, for the consumer, price is rising. Now, if price is rising, then demand should fall according to law of demand. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Then as price is rising, demand is falling. So this movement should be along the demand curve. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
To the consumer, price is rising. So consumer is reducing its demand. How to show it? It should be the movement along the same demand curve, right?
Yes, ma'am.
On the other hand, with a similar thing, whoever will pay the tax, to the producer, price is falling. And if price is falling, producer will reduce the supply, and that should be the movement along his own supply curve, right? Clear? Is it okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So look, this is the movement for the consumer. This is the movement of the consumer, and this is the movement of the producer. And ultimately, they will stop where the gap is the tax rate. The price gap is the tax rate. That is true. But where they will stop?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, why the producer is reducing his supply?
Why the producer?
Why the producer is reducing his supply?
Due to tax rate.
Yes, yes. Tax is imposed, na? So from this diagram, we know if tax is imposed, then for the producer, price is falling. He is getting lesser money than before. Initially, he was getting 3, now he is getting 2.8. So as price received by the producer is lesser than before, so he will reduce his supply. Then
Yes, ma'am.
so ultimately, the consumers stop here and producers stop here. Why? Because the gap of their prices is the tax rate. Done. But where the producer at this final point, what consumer is demanding, producer is supplying the same amount, right? Because look, this is the amount of quantity or amount of commodity consumer is demanding, and this is the amount of commodity producer is supplying. The prices are different. The prices are different because the difference between these prices going to the government as a tax revenue. But in terms of quantity, they are happy, right? In terms of quantity, they are satisfied. What consumers are demanding, producers are supplying. There is no excess supply, there is no excess demand. Do you get that? At this point, this is the point for consumer, this is the point for producer. বুঝে যাচ্ছে না? At this point, what is the supply, or rather at this point, what is the supply by the supplier? This is the quantity supplied by the supply side. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is the demand of the consumer? Look, this is the demand of the consumer, the same quantity. In terms of quantity, we are measuring quantity on the horizontal axis. So in terms of quantity, whatever is demanded by the consumer is supplied by the supplier, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So in terms of quantity, both sides is happy. Both sides are happy because there is no excess supply, excess demand. Whatever is the demand in the
Ma'am,
market.
can you repeat, please?
Yeah, I'm saying that at this point, that is the ultimate point of the consumer and the producer's position after paying the tax, whatever is supplied by the producer is demanded by the consumer. Look at the quantity, the same quantity, right? If it is 10, so 10 units is supplied by the producer and 10 unit is demanded by the consumer. So demand is equal to supply, right? Any doubt?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Ma'am,
quantity, yeah.
but the prices are different.
Prices are different. Obviously, it is different. But in terms of quantity, they are satisfied.
Yes, ma'am. In terms of quantity.
In terms of quantity, they are satisfied. There is no question of excess demand or excess supply. Okay. The
Ma'am,
gap is there. Yes. What?
can you please explain once more why the incidence of tax falls more heavily on producers when the when the supply is inelastic? In the second
Okay.
case.
Okay. In the second case. Okay. Oh, এটা কি হলো? দাঁড়াও। Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to explain it, but before that, I just want to tell you this situation, that is that okay, that in terms of quantity, both are satisfied. Then why don't we call this situation as another equilibrium? Because what is equilibrium? Equilibrium means demand is equal to supply, right? Now, at this point also, after paying the tax, after imposition of the tax, two separate points are there. One point is on the demand side and another point is on the supply side. But this final situation is also the equilibrium situation, though the prices are different. But in terms of quantity, demand is equal to supply. If we define equilibrium as demand is equal to supply, then why don't we call this situation as equilibrium? So this is also equilibrium. Is that okay? This is what I wanted to say actually. This is also equilibrium. Prices are different because of the intervention, but in terms of quantity, as there is no excess demand, no excess supply, so price mechanism is working successfully and to satisfy the both side of the market. So this is also equilibrium. Do you get the point? I'm going to explain that in inelastic and elastic part, but this is the thing which I wanted to say. বলো এটা কি বুঝতে পেরেছো?
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম।
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, regarding the inelastic, someone was asking about the second one, that if the supply side is relatively inelastic as compared to the demand side, more burden is imposed on the supplier. The second diagram is showing this. If supply side is more inelastic, relatively inelastic than the demand side, then relatively more burden is on the supplier. So what is the conclusion? If you are more inelastic, your burden will be more. If you are more elastic, the burden will be less. So there is an inverse relation between the elasticity and the burden of tax. Okay. Okay, no answer is coming out. I couldn't understand whether it is clear to all or not. If it
What is
is
the
clear,
question?
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
Clear.
Someone has a question. Yes.
Ma'am, okay, no, okay, fine.
Okay. So let me go to the next unit finally. I'm very happy that ultimately I can start it. Yes. This is the utilitarian approach. Utility, simple utility. Huh? So what is that? The initial story may be known to some of you, but let me explain the story. The initial, the background of the utility approach is just like a story. So what is that? Utility means the level of satisfaction. Okay. generally the people are calling it the level of satisfaction. This is the I am very satisfied, I am not so satisfied. We are talking like this now. So in economics, that satisfaction is called utility. Okay. Now, when we are talking that I am very satisfied or I am not so satisfied, that means we are measuring the utility. Na? Somehow we are getting the benefit of the commodity, and this is how we are expressing. So initially economists were trying to measure utility, just like the length, just like the weight, just like your age, just like your height. So they were trying to measure the level of satisfaction, and they said that you can measure utility. That is their thought. So they said that one can measure utility, and so if you can measure, so there must be some measurement unit. So that unit is called util. It is written, look, it is written here. It is called util. Look, this is called util. So they said the measurement unit of utility is util, just like centimeter, just like kg, just like inch. Like, so util is another measurement unit. So according to this approach, you can measure utility, and the measurement unit is util. So this approach is called cardinal approach. This approach is called cardinal approach of utility, who is saying that one can measure utility. Okay, but there is a problem in reality. In theoretically, it may not be the problem, but in reality, it creates significant problem. How? Look, say this is winter time. The level of satisfaction you are getting from a glass of water is quite low as compared to the same glass, the level of satisfaction of same glass of water in summer, right? Do you get the point? Say you are drinking
Yes,
a
ma'am.
glass of water now in the winter. Obviously, you will get some level of satisfaction, but this is quite low as compared to the satisfaction of the same glass of water in summer. So, but in case of weight, in case of height, this is not true. If your height is say 5 feet 6 inch, so this is 5 feet 6 inch in summer, this is 5 feet 6 inch in winter, right? If your weight is 60 kg, then 60 kg throughout the year. But in case of the glass of utility, the satisfaction from the glass of water, it varies. Okay, it varies over the time, and also across, it varies among the individuals. The level of satisfaction which I am getting, you may not get that. So much variation is there for the level of satisfaction, because it is the mental state, right? Level of satisfaction is coming from our mental state. If I'm happy, then I'm satisfied. If I'm not happy, I'm not so satisfied. But the happiness, how can you measure happiness? It varies. It varies man to man. So that creates problem. So when we are going to apply this cardinal approach, in reality, severe problem is coming. How to measure? So many obstacles, so many barriers are coming. So how to measure? Then, as you can understand, this is the criticism of the cardinal approach. And what is the ultimate criticism? You cannot apply cardinal approach in reality. Then what is the alternative? The alternative is the ordinal approach. The second one, the ordinal approach. Now, what ordinal approach is saying? Ordinal approach is saying that yes, you cannot measure utility in the real life, but you can rank. Okay, the absolute value is not possible, but you can rank the relative position. You can find it out. For example, as I said, the satisfaction from the glass of water in the winter is lesser than the satisfaction from the same glass of water in summer. So you can rank. Look, you can rank. From where you can get the maximum satisfaction, that you can understand, that you can tell. Okay, you can say that, okay, I'm getting more satisfaction in summer than winter from this glass of water. That you can say easily. But if I'm asking what is the level of satisfaction, then you will be confused. How to tell? Okay, so this is the advancement of the ordinal approach over the cardinal approach. So ordinal approach is saying that, okay, I'm accepting that I cannot measure utility in my real life. Yes, any problem? Someone's mic is on. Yeah. So ordinal approach is saying that, okay, I'm accepting that I cannot measure utility in absolute term in my real life, but I can easily rank. So follow this policy. So this is called the ordinal approach. Now in this unit, we will discuss this utility from different angles. So basically we are dealing about the consumer. In this unit, we are dealing about the consumer satisfaction level. Okay, so basically the demand side. Here we will forget about the supply side. Regarding the production, cost, anything. We just forget about all this. Only consumer, only demand. Right? And here we will discuss in details about the satisfaction, about the behavior of the consumer. So this is why this chapter is called consumer behavior. But the basic thing is, we will follow ordinal approach. Mostly we will follow ordinal approach, but our starting point will be cardinal approach. Actually, the ordinal approach is based on the cardinal concept. Okay, so we will start with the cardinal approach, and then after we will convert ourselves to the ordinal approach. Okay, so this is the basic skeleton of this unit. Is it okay? Any doubt? Oh, look, this is the story, and no question will come from this story. But if you cannot understand this story, you cannot understand this unit at all. Okay. So is there any query? Is there any query? Whatever I said.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. এত সন্দেহ সমস্যা হচ্ছে কেন বলো তো? কারোর কথা শুনতে পাচ্ছি না। Okay. So this is the first concept which we are going to introduce here. The total utility and the marginal utility. Now what is the total utility? The satisfaction from consumption of a certain commodity is called total utility. Okay, this is the definition. And what is marginal utility? It is the change of total utility due to 1 unit change in consumption of the commodity. Okay, it is the change of total utility. So del of total utility due to 1 unit change in consumption. So these are the definitions, and after getting the definition as the economic student, our next task is to draw it. Okay, so what is the diagram? Look, this is the diagram. Look here what we are doing. In the horizontal axis, we are measuring quantity consumed. Okay, on the horizontal axis, we are measuring quantity consumed. And the total utility, TU for total utility, MU for marginal utility, these we are measuring along the vertical axis. Done? Now look, what is the shape of the total utility curve? If we are increasing the consumption, then total utility is rising. This is from our reality. Just think about consumption of any of your commodity which you are consuming daily. You can understand if you increase consumption of that commodity, the total utility will rise continuously. But look at the change of the rise. It is falling. Okay, the So what is the conclusion? Total utility is rising at the decreasing rate as it is concave. Look at the shape of this curve. So total utility is rising with the increase in consumption at a decreasing rate. So this is the property of the total utility curve, and ultimately it is, look, it is always rising. It cannot attain maximum and it cannot be negative in general. Okay, it is always rising, maybe insignificant, maybe very close to zero. The slope will be close to zero, but always positive. Okay, so this is the property of the total utility curve for the normal good. For the normal good, if the good is not normal, like inferior or the bad good, then total utility will fall. But in general, if the commodity is a normal commodity, then the total utility curve is always positively sloped. But the slope is falling. It is increasing, total utility is increasing at the decreasing rate. Acha. Now tell me your doubt from the total utility curve. If you have any query on the shape of total utility curve, ask. Any doubt? Anyone? Am I audible properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Acha, tale no doubt, to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Now you can ask me why total utility, what is the logic behind the change? Look, as I said repeatedly, the total utility is rising at the decreasing rate, and that is why the curve is concave to the horizontal axis. Now, what is the background? What is the reason behind this type of change? Now, before explaining, I will explain it. But before explaining it, look, what is the name of the change of total utility due to change in quantity? Follow the. What is the name of change of total utility due to change in quantity?
Marginal utility.
Marginal
utility.
utility.
Yes, marginal utility. So as I said, that the change of total utility is falling. It is increasing at the decreasing rate. That means the change is falling. That means the marginal utility is falling, right? So change is falling means change is the marginal utilities. Change is falling means marginal utility is falling. So given that, if I draw the marginal utility curve, this is the red one is the marginal utility curve. Look at the shape. It is downward fall. It is negatively sloped. It is downward sloping. It is a curve negatively sloped. Fine. Now the question is why it is negatively sloped. I'm going closer to the answer of why total utility curve is concave to the horizontal axis. What is the reason the total utility is rising at the decreasing rate? Why? So anyway, from the total utility curve, we derive the marginal utility curve, and we can see that marginal utility curve is downward sloping. Okay. Now, there is a law. This is called law of diminishing marginal utility. This law is empirical. Remember, this law is just a law you cannot check through data. As it is the level of satisfaction, as okay, before that, one more thing. Look, here we are saying that if I change the quantity, my total utility is changing like this, my marginal utility is changing like that. So actually what we are doing, look, we are accepting the cardinal utility, right? Here we are applying the cardinal approach. Here we are applying the cardinal approach, because I am saying that if I am consuming this much of quantity, then this is my total utility. And I am plotting it. Say it is 10, it is 15, like this. So that means I have accepted cardinal approach. Right? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is why I said here that we will start from the cardinal approach. Our starting point will be cardinal approach, and then after we will shift towards the ordinal approach. So when we are drawing total utility curve or marginal utility curve, basically we have accepted the cardinal approach. Though we said it is not realistic, but as a starting point, we have accepted this approach. And that is why we can draw the curves. Otherwise, we cannot. In case of ordinal approach, we can rank. How can you get the absolute value of total utility? In case of ordinal approach, it is not possible. But in cardinal approach, you can. And given that, we can find out this. So this is the thing which I wanted to say. Now look, law of diminishing marginal utility. First of all, what it is? With increase in consumption, marginal utility is continuously falling. This is the law. Okay. The law is saying that if you increase your consumption, then the marginal utility from that consumption will fall continuously. Okay. Now, the beauty of this law is you cannot check it. You cannot check it through data. Because how can you get the data? In case of, we already know that in reality, cardinal approach is not valid. And as it is not valid, you cannot get the data from reality. And as you cannot get this data of the marginal utility, you cannot check whether this law is true in reality or not. You cannot check whether this law is true in reality or not. You have to.
And then why was the graph made? Like we can't
This is
check it
based
in-
on the cardinal approach. This is based, actually, look, this is from the back calculation. We have to accept the law. The law is from the, what can I say? This is from the experience. Okay. This is from the experience of consumption of various commodities. Okay. Just you have an idea. You have an idea, and from that idea, you create the law. As we cannot check whether this law is really there, whether this law is true or false through the data, we have to accept it. And if we accept this law, then we can draw marginal utility curve like this. And if we can draw marginal utility curve like this red line, then my total utility curve will be concave to the horizontal axis. So ultimately, what is the conclusion? The reason behind the concave total utility curve is law of diminishing marginal utility. The reason behind the concave total utility curve is the law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, think of it and then ask. I'm waiting. If you have any doubt, you are free to ask. Please ask, I will repeat. But don't leave the class with doubt.
Ma'am, no doubt.
Okay. Now look, for the normal good, marginal utility is always positive, right? As I say, if it is a bad good, then if you are consuming more and more, the utility situation will be different. But if it is a normal good, like salt, like food item, like clothing, the normal, okay, the normal good which we are using generally, for those marginal utility is always positive. And if marginal utility is always positive, what is marginal utility? It is the change of total utility, na? Due to change in quantity. So if marginal utility is always positive, then the change of total utility with respect to change in quantity is also positive. That means total utility curve is always positively sloped for the normal good. That is why I said that generally total utility curve is positively sloped, always. Those who had economics in their school level, sometimes they are asking that, no ma'am, this is incomplete diagram. The complete diagram is like this. They know this is the complete diagram. But I have an objection there, that this is possible if the commodity is a bad one. For normal good, the downward sloping total utility is not there. So if we assume Q as the normal commodity, total utility curve will be always positively sloped. It may be very insignificant, very close to zero, but positive. Okay. Look, this is the marginal utility and the theory of demand. So here we are going to, so we know what is total utility, what is marginal utility and all. Now we want to relate that utility with the theory of demand. As I said, here in this chapter, we will only discuss about the demand side, about the consumer. Then we are going to relate it. Okay. Then we will start the discussion in details. P is the price of the commodity. Okay. So if P is the price of the commodity, that means if you want to purchase 1 unit of the commodity, you have to pay P. Is it okay? If you want to purchase, if you want to consume 1 unit of the commodity, you have to pay T amount of money. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So this is the sacrifice. If you are paying something, that means you are sacrificing. Na? So this is the sacrifice for 1 unit of your consumption. So we can say this is the marginal sacrifice. The P is the marginal sacrifice for 1 unit of consumption. This is the sacrifice because I am giving the money to the seller. So I am sacrificing the money. How much? P. Why? Because I'm going to consume 1 unit of the commodity. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Now, if I am consuming that 1 unit of the commodity, what I am getting? MU amount of benefit or MU amount of utility. Right? Because marginal utility is the change of total utility due to 1 unit change in consumption. So here I have changed my consumption by 1 unit. So what will be the, as I have increased my consumption by 1 unit, so my total utility will also increase. How much? By MU amount. Is it okay? So MU is the marginal benefit or marginal return from 1 unit of consumption. So I am getting MU from that 1 unit. I have given P and I am getting MU. So first 2 bullets are clear to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So look, give and take policy. So you are giving P amount of money. In exchange of that, you are receiving MU amount of utility. Okay. Now you want to compare. You are the rational individual, you are always comparing. But when you are going to compare it, you are facing the problem. Okay, why you are facing the problem? Because P is the price, is the money, is the rupees or dollar like this, and mu is the benefit. Mu is the utility. So how can you compare price with the benefit? How can you compare centimeter with kg? How can you compare your years of age with with liter? Can you compare it? Say you want
No,
to
ma'am.
compare your height with the amount of milk you are consuming. Can you compare? Because one is in terms of centimeter or in terms of inch or in terms of foot. Another is in terms of liter. So to compare, we need same base. We need same platform, right? Then I can compare. The base should be same. Now, at the equilibrium, marginal sacrifice should equal to the marginal benefit, right? If I am sacrificing more than I am returning, then I am not interested to consume the commodity. On the other hand, if my return is more than my sacrifice, then I am interested to consume more of the commodity. Do you get that? Okay, I'm telling again. What I am sacrificing, P. What I am getting, mu. So at the equilibrium, I want my sacrifice should equal to return. My marginal sacrifice should equal to my marginal return. If my marginal sacrifice is more than marginal return, then what should be my choice? Tell me. If my marginal sacrifice is greater than marginal return, that means P is greater than marginal utility, then what will be my decision? Will I consume it or I will stop consumption? What I will do?
Reduce consumption.
Yes, I will reduce because I am not satisfied. My satisfaction is less than my sacrifice. I'm sacrificing more. So I'm going to reduce the consumption. I'm going to stop my consumption. On the other hand, if marginal utility or marginal benefit is more than my sacrifice, so I'm very happy, right? My marginal sacrifice is less, my marginal benefit is more. So I'm very happy. In that case, I'm going to consume more. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, if I consume more, okay, if I consume more, then that means the quantity is increasing. I'm very happy because I'm getting more than I'm giving. So I'm increasing the consumption. And when I'm increasing that Q consumption, then my marginal utility will increase or decrease.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Increase.
Yes, say the initial condition is P.
What was the question? Will you repeat?
Yes, I'm repeating. I am repeating. Listen. Say price is less than marginal utility. So I'm very happy. Because of that, I am increasing my consumption. So Q is rising. Okay. Now, if Q is rising, then what happened with mu? What will be the change of mu?
It will
It
fall.
decrease.
It will fall, right? Because there is law of diminishing marginal utility. So then marginal utility will fall. Okay. Then mu will fall. Okay. I cannot change the price. I'm the consumer. I cannot change the price. So price is given. I cannot do anything with my left hand side, but I can do something with my right hand side. So if marginal utility is falling, ultimately price will be equal to marginal utility. Then you get the point. So ultimately my equilibrium condition will be P is equal to mu. Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
But there is a confusion. Again, that confusion is still there. That price is in terms of rupees and marginal utility. Say, for the time being, we assume, okay, cardinal approach is there. So marginal utility is term of util. So how can you compare these two? This problem is still there. To solve this problem, there is another assumption. The assumption is not written here, but I should write it. The assumption is there. What is the assumption? Assumption is marginal utility of money is equal to 1. This is another assumption of this approach. Marginal utility of money is assumed as 1. This is assumption. Remember, this is assumption. Now, if marginal utility of money is 1, that means for 1 unit, if I change my money or if I change my expenditure by 1 unit, the utility which I am sacrificing is 1. Here I am spending P amount of money. So what is the utility I am sacrificing? P. Okay? বুঝতে পারছো না? সবাই কিরকম সাইলেন্ট হয়ে গেছে।
ম্যাম এই জায়গাটা আরেকবার একটু রিপিট করুন না।
আরেকবার বলছি, হ্যাঁ বলছি। So the economists assume that marginal utility of money is 1. So what does it mean? That if I am sacrificing 1 rupee, that means my marginal sacrifice is 1. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So here the price of the commodity is P. So I am sacrificing P amount of money. So in terms of utility, what is my sacrifice? P. If I am sacrificing, if I am giving 1 rupee, then my sacrifice is 1. If I am giving P rupees, then my sacrifice will be P.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now we have converted that price, that is money, in utility. So that this is the marginal sacrifice in terms of util now. Okay, that P is the marginal sacrifice in terms of utility. This is the marginal utility. It is always in terms of utility. So my left hand side is converted to utility. Initially it was in terms of rupees. Now it is in terms of utility. So now it is easy for us to compare. You get that thing? What was the problem? The problem is price is in terms of rupees and utility in terms of util. So how can I compare rupees with util? That was the basic problem. So to solve the problem, what we did, we converted rupees in util. So my left hand side is in terms of utility measurement, right hand side is also in terms of utility measurement. So utility versus utility. Now it is easy for us to compare. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And ultimate equilibrium will be what will be the equilibrium condition? That is price is equal to marginal utility. Now what is price? We know price is the marginal sacrifice and mu is the marginal benefit. So the equilibrium condition is marginal sacrifice is equal to marginal benefit. So tell me, up to this bullet, is it okay to all? Up to this bullet.
Yes, ma'am.
No, so many new things will come in this chapter. So you have to concentrate, you have to understand. You have to concentrate, you have to understand. So many new things.
Hello, ma'am.
I'm
Just
not
one doubt.
Yeah.
Just one doubt. Like to do it in the same measurement, we are converting price into utility. Like we are taking price in terms of utility. Okay.
Yes. we have converted price into utility.
Here we are using cardinal approach.
Yes, yes, I said that. Yeah. We will start with cardinal approach. Acha. Now look at the last bullet. So this is actually the conclusion. Marginal utility curve is the demand curve. Look at, let me go back to the, so what is marginal utility from the equilibrium? Marginal utility is nothing but the price. Okay. At the equilibrium, price is equal to marginal utility. So go back to the marginal utility curve. Here, we are measuring quantity along the horizontal axis. And along the vertical axis, we measured mu. So now cut that mu and write P, because at the equilibrium, P is equal to mu. So what we are measuring along the vertical axis? P. What we are measuring along the horizontal axis? Quantity consumed. So the mu curve is nothing but the demand curve. Do you get the point? Demand curve is showing what? For different prices, how the consumers are changing its demand. That is the consumption. So marginal utility curve is showing exactly that thing. So that is why we can say marginal utility curve is nothing but the demand curve. Okay. Look, this is the very first class of this consumer behavior chapter. So here I will not discuss a lot in the first class. I'm just giving you some ideas. I will start the details discussion from the next class. So I'm just giving you the broad idea, some new, ideas, I should say, of this chapter. That's all.
Can you just once again explain the relationship between marginal utility and the demand curve?
Yeah, look, at the equilibrium, marginal utility is equal to price. This part is okay for you?
Yes, ma'am.
So at the equilibrium, marginal utility is equal to price. So go back here. This is our marginal utility curve. Along the horizontal axis, we are measuring the quantity consumed. That means the consumer's demand, right? Consume means who is consuming? Consumer. Na? So this is the demand for the consumer. This is the demand for the consumer like this. And along the vertical axis, I can replace mu by price. Because we know at the equilibrium, price is equal to mu. So if we are doing this, that means along the vertical axis, we will measure price, and along the horizontal axis, we are measuring quantity. And this curve is showing what? If this is the price, then that will be the quantity consumed. If this is the price, that will be the quantity consumed. That means the demand of the consumer. If price is this is the demand of the consumer. So the curve is showing the demand of the consumer. So we can say this is the demand curve.
Okay, ma'am.
So this price we are taking in terms of rupees, right? Not in terms of utility.
This curve?
This price, that means the unit of the price we are taking in rupees or whatever currency. We're not taking it in
Whatever. Right, dollar, rupees, whatever. The normal price. Because this is rupees, that can be, you can say P as utility, P as rupees. P in terms of utility, P is in terms of rupees, because marginal utility of money is 1. So this is another way to have the demand curve. We derive the demand curve, we draw our demand curve based on the law of demand, right? But here we are getting another process of getting the demand curve. What is the process? Just draw the marginal utility curve following the law of diminishing marginal utility, and we will get the demand curve. So marginal utility curve is nothing but the demand curve. And you know, at the end of this chapter, we will get different demand curves from different approaches. So there are different ways to have the demand curve. This is one of these ways. Okay. Okay, no problem. Start slowly, no issue. But be very clear about the subject. Okay. Will I continue? সবাই ঘুমিয়ে পড়লে নাকি গো?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so this is the ordinal. Yeah. Will I start ordinal? Okay, let me start. I will just discuss the assumption and we'll stop. The details will be in the next class. So the cardinal approach is finished here. This is our, these are our, what can I say? These are our base. This is the base of the chapter. And after finishing this base, after completing that base, we are going to the ordinal, we are going to develop this chapter. Okay. So what is the assumptions of the ordinal utility? So you know what is ordinal? You can compare, you cannot measure. Here, from here, we cannot compare, we cannot measure, we only compare. Okay. So what are the assumptions of this approach? The first one is completeness. Completeness means what? Say there are three mutually, what is mutually exclusive events? Anyone have any idea what is mutually exclusive event? Any idea from statistics, Venn diagram?
Ma'am, there is no intersection
Set theory.
between the two events.
Right. It is daytime. That means night is not here. So day and night both cannot happen at the same time. So these two events are mutually exclusive. Okay, mutually exclusive means if this is here, that means another is not here. It's not possible. So say there are three mutually exclusive events, X, Y, Z. And if X is preferred to Y, X is indifferent to Y, and y is preferred to x. These are the three events. Say there are three sets, x and y. X is preferred to y, may possible. X is indifferent to y, that is also possible. Y is preferred to x, this is possible. But if x is preferred to y, that means, if this is true, if x is preferred to y is there, that means x is indifferent to y or y is preferred to x, these situations will not come. Any of these three situations will be there. Okay, these are the three events. Any of these three events will be there. Either x is preferred to y, or y is preferred to x, or x is indifferent to y. Any of these three events will be there. Okay, this is called completeness. Any of these three events will be there in the market or in the situation. Transitivity. Transitivity is the second assumption. What is that? If A is preferred, what is A, what is B? These are the commodity bundles. X, Y, A, B, C. These are the commodity bundles. Commodity bundles means what? In this bundle, we have different commodities, a combination of commodities. There are n number of commodities, right? We are consuming infinite number of commodities daily, right? Say there are n number of commodities which we are consuming. So A is the commodity bundle. So within this bundle, all those n commodities are there. So if A is preferred to B, B is preferred to C, then A is preferred to C. This is called transitivity property. Okay, this is called transitivity property. Say there are three commodity bundles A, B, C, and A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C. So what is the conclusion? Then A is preferred to C. Okay. The third property, the third assumption of the ordinal approach is non-saturation. That means consumers are always preferred more. They are not satisfied at any point of time. More is preferred. If you are giving more, it is accepted. Okay, so this is the third assumption of this ordinal approach, non-saturation. They are not saturated ever. More is always preferred to them. And the fourth assumption is convexity of preference. Convexity of preference means if some variety is given, say you are giving A, a commodity bundle, B, another commodity bundle. Say the consumer is preferring A to B. Okay, say consumer is preferring A to B. That means if you are giving A and B both options to the consumer will choose A. Done? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you are giving both options A and B to the consumer is choosing A. Now consider there is another bundle Z. What is Z? Z is the combination of A and B. So 60% of A is there and 40% of B is there. So more variety is there inside Z. Okay. So you have created another bundle Z which has some properties of A and some properties of B. So Z has more property than A than B. Then consumer will prefer Z. Consumer will prefer Z for A, consumer will prefer Z for B. So more variety is preferred. Okay, so this is the fourth assumption of the ordinal approach. Again, what are the four assumptions? Completeness, transitivity, non-saturation, convexity of preference. Now ask your query from this assumption. Kono doubt nahi, all clear? All lot of doubt. You cannot understand where to ask the question. Hello, I need answer.
Ma'am, it's okay. No doubt.
Okay. So based on that approach, we will start the ordinal things, and so many things we have to discuss there. But I think for today, I should finish here. From the next class, because you take your time. I'm just repeating again. First of all, the history, this is the background. Then these are the first two concepts, the total utility and the marginal utility, and the corresponding diagram of these curves. And then the law of diminishing marginal utility, very important for the consumer behavior as a whole. And the last, the relation between the marginal utility and the theory of demand. So we are just matching how the utility is related with the demand, and what is the net result? That marginal utility curve is nothing but the demand curve. Okay, this is the conclusion. And then after, we have started the ordinal approach. And the first thing which I discussed is the assumptions. So there are 4 assumptions. I discussed all of them. Based on those assumptions, the analysis will start from the next class. Okay, so this is the summary of today's class. And regarding the book, regarding the consumer behavior, someone was asking individually that what is the reference. So I said in the class that basically I will follow, for same one, I will follow ManQ. Mostly I will follow ManQ as it is the textbook referred by the university. I will follow ManQ, but in some parts, some portions are missing or not sufficient in ManQ. For those sections, I will follow some separate books, and that I will repeatedly mention in the class, and I have done this. For example, in case of the positive approach, normative approach, I said that the reference is Lipset crystal. I said in the class repeatedly, only for that part follow Lipset crystal. Other than that, basically I am following ManQ. In the class also, I am showing the pictures, the diagrams from the ManQ, so that it is easy for you to understand when you will read it. So I'm repeating, it may not be, it is not written. Actually, there is a lesson plan which is uploaded in the college website based on the UGC NAC norm. So that is why the books are not there. The name of the book's reference is not there. If you open Department of Economics, the lesson plan of all the teachers are available there. You can get the lesson plans, but as it is followed, it is done according to the NAC policy, NAC formula. So reference books are not there. But as I said repeatedly in the class, for each class I said what is the reference, from where I am discussing. So I don't think it is a very big problem for the students to understand from where to read. Okay, and regarding this thing, consumer behavior, now I am going to tell you the reference for the consumer behavior. For consumer behavior, ManQ is not sufficient. For consumer behavior, ManQ is not sufficient. ManQ is a good book, you can follow it. Only for the basic understanding you can follow. But for details, if you want to know this chapter, this unit in details, then you have to read some other books as well. What is the name of the book? You can follow Intermediate Microeconomics of Varian, Hall Varian, or you can follow the books which we will follow from SEM 3, that is Pindike and Rubenfeld. Okay, so these are the 2 references. ManQ is always there. other than ManQ, the additional 2 references for this particular unit, that is consumer behavior, are first is the Hall variant intermediate microeconomics, and second is Pindike-Rubenfeld microeconomics. Okay, so you can follow, in addition to ManQ, you can follow these 2 books as well. Is it clear to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. And I think all the free PDF versions are available online. If you have the hard copy, it's okay. If you don't have, don't panic. Just download the PDF versions and read it. Only for consumer behavior. Okay. Okay, so I stop here for today. I hope I can take the class for next Monday. Unfortunately, I couldn't, but in next Monday, I can take the class, and there I will continue.
Ma'am, have you taken the attendance?
Yes.